Hey guys, this week's video is going to be a lot different than my other videos. As you can probably tell, it's not a short because this week I took the whole time off of working on my game and instead submitted a project into Godot's Wild Jam 59. A lot of you guys probably know this, but the concept of a game jam is to create a game in a small period of time, usually a week or a weekend, and it's usually centered around a pretty simple theme. The one I entered was called the Godot Wild Jam 59. The theme was train. It had some other wildcards, but I didn't get to any of those. My goal, which I was trying to keep very humble at the time, was just to learn navigation in Godot. The concept that I was going for was a stealth-based game that would take place entirely on a moving train. And to start, I was taking the shell of Grimm, throwing away all of his code, and trying to design him as a character that could navigate to the player and search for the player in a stealth format. I'm in that awkward spot where I'm using Godot 3.5, and navigation, I guess, changed a lot, even in 3.5 variants, and especially in 4.0. It sounds like 4.0 got a lot easier, but even the 3.5 tutorials I was finding would refer to something called a navigation server. There's probably nothing more frustrating than being on a deadline, following a tutorial, and then seeing that their options for nodes on Godot aren't my options on Godot. Like, I was going insane. Even now, as I record this, looking back, I'm not sure what I was missing or how I couldn't figure that out, but thankfully, there was a tutorial on Game Development Center's YouTube, and it saved me. If not for that, I probably would have been spinning my wheels for the next 3 days. Even then, it was still a lot of trial and error. I remember bringing my laptop to work. Any chance I had, I'd take it out and just try this thing or that thing to try to get it working, and eventually when it did, it felt so good. At this point, I was 3 days in with 5 days left to go, and I had a character that could walk around, an enemy that could see him and run to him, and walls, I guess you could say, not much. From here, my focus started to split into two separate directions. The first one was what happens when Grimm gets to the player. In some typical stealth games, when you get caught, the game just starts over. In other games, you go into a combat sequence. I kept hearing the echoes of everyone's advice to not get too complicated, so instead I just made a small mechanic that happens when you get caught, the camera zooms in and you have to spam on spacebar to break free. Every time you get caught, it'll get harder to break free. That was simple enough. There was maybe some polish that went into that, but the other big focus that I was working on was Grimm's state machine, and this was a mess. Every time I thought Grimm was in a good spot and his state machine was working, I would catch a new bug. Either there'd be an exclamation point over his head or a different question mark, or he would see me when he shouldn't, or he wouldn't see me at all, which would happen all the time. By the end of this project, his whole state machine is just scotch tape and rubber bands held together. It's probably looking like it's holding together better than it is, when in actuality it's breaking, you just don't see it. I would continue working on his state machine throughout the entirety of the game jam. I think even the day before I figured out, oh, he doesn't have the proper reaction for this mechanic or that mechanic. He was always a mess. Okay, so now I felt like I had enough basic mechanics to actually work on the game, and here's where I think I probably made a mistake. Tuesday was my only day off in the whole game jam, where I could spend the whole day working on this, and I devoted it entirely to the opening, and I don't think I should have done that. For no reason at all, the opening has a different tile set, it has the train from the outside, you can go in, there's a sleeping bag, you lay on it, it has sort of the cinematic, like going to sleep and waking up, like it looks nice, but it took a whole day, and my busiest day. So my work was really laid out ahead of me. I had a lot to do. I had to make how many levels, I didn't really know. I had to figure out what mechanics were going to be there besides you see and run away from enemies. And hopefully I was going to have it be fun. I think a big part of me struggled with not working linearly. I wanted to just start from the beginning and work my way to the end, but I think just starting with level design and the big stuff that really mattered, and then doing the kind of cute stuff in the beginning and the end, if I had time, made way more sense. So Wednesday, if I remember, I spent a lot of time working on the sleeping Grimm, which was surprisingly good to have a little bit of variation in him. The idea started as a tutorial idea, and that I was going to have a bucket you would walk over and it would sort of wake Grimm up and it could show you what it's like to get caught. But after adding it, I realized that it's probably good enough just to have as a level design technique. I think at this time too, I was spending so much of my efforts just trying to put together the tiles in Godot. I have a bad habit of sectioning my tiles all out, so I won't just have like a bottom layer and a top layer. I'll have floor, then I'll have floor shadow, and then the way that this one worked, I have to have an offset, so I had offset floor shadow, then I have walls, there's wall shadow, then there's offset wall shadow, so there's literally 7 layers all for the tiles. After going through that process a couple times, I realized I'm just going to make it once and instance it, and every room can kind of be the same. I ended up doing one more variation where there's like a big room and a small room. But I remember thinking Wednesday that I got nothing done, that I was just painting environments and Grimm was sleeping and there was a bucket. Thursday, I had to tackle something that I forgot to even kind of consider, which was patrolling. So Grimm wasn't even close to done. I realized that he should be patrolling. He can't just be standing still and looking down a hallway. He has to be walking from multiple points. So that was a huge process to get going, but I'm glad I did. That probably made the game feel more like a game than anything else. I did learn after the fact that I guess there's like a path 2D node, but I was just finding vectors, finding them on the map, and then putting them into an array, and then feeding that information to Grimm. I'm not really sure what would have been faster, but it all worked for me, so I was happy. Friday, I would say, is where level design actually started, which seems insane now, looking back. That the project is due on Sunday, and I don't even have a level, really. I have a cart that's kind of empty, and I have mechanics of a character. And the reason why I say level design really starts is that this is where I started to work on crates. And crates were basically cover, and cover in a stealth game is kind of everything. Now, finally, we had a way to run away from Grim, to break line of sight, to have him lose you and give up. I did run into one small problem with cover that I can explain here. So you would think from a top-down perspective that you just make the whole box a barrier for the ray cast that Grim sees, like stop his sight, his line of vision. But as you can see here, if I do that, the characters can stand right next to each other, and Grim, while he should be able to see, he doesn't because the box is technically blocking his vision. But on the flip side, if I only include the upper half of the box, then he'll see you around the corner. I remember for a split second when I noticed this thinking like, oh, my stealth just isn't going to work. Like, I have no idea how to fix that. And it was actually really simple to fix. I just made a script on every box that said, if this player is above the bottom position, then use one collision box. And if it's below, then use the other. So from there, I was in full-on level design mode. I was putting boxes in random places and hoping that I had enough content to actually make it through 3 levels. My Saturday was a really long day at work, so I didn't get started until about 9 o'clock. And the whole day was just level design. From beginning to end, it was just putting down boxes, trying to find fun play patterns, and trying to make a game so I have something to show for Sunday. By the end of Saturday night, all I needed was 2 more rooms, some kind of ending, and I had aspirations to put in secret areas, but we never got to that because, spoilers, I was sick Sunday. Now looking back, I'm pretty sure I had a stomach bug, but I woke up about 6 o'clock not feeling well, but I didn't want this all to be for nothing, so from 6 to 9:30, I just put all my work into finishing the game and figuring out how to upload it and get it into the game jam. And actually, if you go back and look, there are even still spots in the stealth sections where I intended to add a secret area, but never did. Also, probably a way bigger glaring oversight is that I had no audio at all in any of the project, which is pretty bad because in the reviewing process, there's a whole category for audio. But on the plus side, I actually got the project done, which was huge, and I didn't think I'd actually get that far. Initially, after getting navigation to work, I thought, even if the game doesn't come together, I have something I've learned from this, but I got so much farther than that, and I'm really happy that I got it all the way to the end. I even find myself wanting to work on more stealth going forward, thinking of possible full games to make out of these kind of mechanics. Like, for instance, how cool it would be to have a stealth-based roguelike where you have like a home base and then you're going into these different missions to gather resources. It's definitely something to think about as I work more on my game. But for now, my project is actually completely playable online through the browser too. It's named Grim Ticket, and the link for it is actually in the description of this video. Thank you guys for watching. Usually I just do shorts, but in the future I really want to do more of these videos. I think it's really fun to do deep dives on everything going on. And if you do end up trying Grim Ticket, let me know what you think. Despite all the stress, it was actually really fun to work on.